Collision Course is back. Schedule B on Revolution Radio every Saturday night, 6 to 8 p.m. You get outer space. You get honest answers, real researchers, truthful answers, and a place to engage with questions. Take part in the discussion. Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com hosts Collision Course every Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Time.
I'm Reverend Medium Tracy Lockwood, and I'd like to invite you to join me as I discuss life from a medium's perspective. I'll be talking about insights that I've gained through readings, with topics like your guides, angels, animal communication, past lives, our transition, and the afterlife. We'll take a deeper look at the metaphysical meanings of symbols and totems, and I'll give you some practical exercises to help you develop your own natural psychic ability. Join me on From a Medium's Perspective.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Well, it's time to stumble down the road with host Bridget Lynn Dolgoff and co-host Jenny Vaught as they carry stones, dig holes, and wield their shovels along the way. On Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. This is not a seated event as they talk, run, stumble, carry, dig, drag, laugh, fight, sing and pray, dance and kick and scream, and oftentimes fall. Hey, is that a stone or a buffalo, Chet? Now, here are your hosts for the next 2 hours on carrying stones and digging holes. But I won't be there.
The hell I won't.
Hey there, everybody. Yes, it's Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm your host, Bridget Lynn Dolgoff of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes for the next 2 hours. Just a couple updates. We are listener supported. We are only supported by you who are listening. Numerous ways that you could go about helping us to make our quota. And all of us at Revolution Radio, we all volunteer, so we do this to bring you the best quality shows, the truth as, you know, each individual host sees it, and the guests that they bring to the mat. So you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can click on the funding area. We've got heirloom seeds. We've got all kinds of ways that you can help fund Revolution Radio. While you're there, if you click on Studio A, you can surf down Studio A and you're going to see me at the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's the bee with the pollen and the legs flying towards the flower, Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. If you click on that, you'll go to a page and there's a little bit of information there. And if you want to contact me for any reason, there's information on there on how to find me. So today, let's see what else I wanted to actually talk about real quick. Oh, finally, I'm getting my courses up on Udemy, so if people are interested in taking some of those classes, Udemy is an online college where anybody can teach and anybody can take classes. And so the first one I've got up is Dowsing 101 Pendulum. So if people are interested in figuring out questions and answers to their health and whatever else they want to use that, you can go ahead and take my class. So anyway, pretty excited about that. All right, so that is it for the updates and what is going on. So today I have a guest named Ken Scott, and I don't know much about Ken. He ended up being one of my Facebook friends kind of through, well, we're going to just say common law channels, or, interest in law, and all the different varieties of law. And so I just started watching Ken post and really liked his information. So I brought Ken on as a guest so that I could actually have a conversation with him and get to meet him, and all of you will get to meet him as well. And he's a pretty smart guy. So Ken, are you there?
I am.
Awesome. So do you want to give the listeners kind of a little bit of a background, and you can take as long as you want, about yourself and kind of how you've ended up kind of doing this?
Well, I got pulled into researching what in the hell is going on in this country. Had my son taken by family law lie. I've been forced out of his life for 13 years now, and I went immediately into researching. I was already someone that was using the computer doing research, but never in my wildest nightmares did I truly have an idea of what was going on in this country. And for the listeners, your country's been taken over, lock, stock, and barrel, by foreign interests. The United States, Title 28, subsection 3002, the United States is a corporation, a mostly foreign-owned and operated corporation, who Donald Trump is the CEO of. And as a businessman, I think that a bankrupt corporation that's been pretending to be government for a very long time, it really is time to shut it down. And what I'll help the listeners do is realize how they've been duped into becoming a member of this mostly private foreign corporation or governmental services corporation, which will tie them in to the Northern Trust Corporation. Some of the listeners may or may not be familiar with this. What I do invite the listeners to do, and I've given you the link that they'll need in order to find the Ken Scott profile. Okay, this profile is not about me, because when my son was taken, my family were with the sheriff's office in my community. In fact, my son's uncle was a sitting sheriff who's now been removed for 3 counts of perjury. But they were not even willing to expose the family court system. And the lack of due process, try absolutely no due process. My son was taken ex parte, placed with his homeless mother, and I wasn't even afforded a hearing on it, and my family was with the sheriff's office, under sheriff, and then became the sitting sheriff. Our country has been completely taken over by the Bar Association, who, I will add, have absolutely no license to practice law, as they're putting Americans in jail for practicing law without a license. No state's allowed to issue a license. They even have Supreme Court opinions, which they call law. I would like the listeners to know, are not law. They're simply opinions of a religious organization. The Northern Trust Corporation, the IRS, and the Bar. What you'll find at the Security and Exchange Commission is will tell you that the IRS and the American Bar Association are the same organization under the Northern Trust. This country was taken over back in the days of Lincoln and the railroads, where they were taking land that didn't belong to them and just giving it away. Same central bankers that have taken over this country and are destroying the very fabric of our communities with things like a created drug war. The CIA is bringing the drugs in. We've known this for 20 years. But how does each and every one of the listeners, every man, woman, and child in America, get duped in to participating with a corporation that's pretending to be the legitimate government of this country? And I will tell you, that's through the birth registration process. The birth registration is assigned a CUSIP number. Part of this journey has been discovering that GMEI utility and Fidelity.com, the little numbers on that birth certificate will tie you directly to accounts all over the world and that all upper cap name that looks like yours. This is America. And then when you see that upper cap language, period, forget the upper cap name or what appears to be a name, which is a title or organization name, that was created by fraud, for fraud, to commit mass fraud against the American people, to dupe them into becoming unpaid employees of a mostly private foreign corporation known as the United States under the Northern Trust Corporation. You have a complete collusion and control of both your police and sheriff by the Bar Association, pulling people into the Admiralty Maritime system, which is military. This country has been taken over, and they're stealing our children with these privately held companies. You can look that up on Manta.com, small business listings. The birth registration process is now being forced at local hospitals. There is no choice for the people that realize that, no, that's signing up to be a member of a mostly foreign, private foreign governmental services corporation that I don't want to be a member of. Well, it's too bad. Statutes and codes are not law. And I'm going to give you links and I'm going to give you names of many other people. The best thing about the Ken Scott profile is the friends list. It's the best part of this journey that I was forced into. And going back to what happened with my son, I find out very quickly that this is going on all over the world. This is just isolated. You would think, having family that were with the sheriff's office, that they wouldn't be able to get away with taking your child without any due process, no hearing allowed. Rulings that said you can't see your son anymore. But it happened. I had the FBI calling me to tell me what happened was wrong, but there's nothing we can do about it. And that's a bold statement. So the FBI called you, the FBI contacted me, because there happened to be one good agent who saw what was going on MySpace, because that's where this started. To tell me you didn't do anything wrong and this judge shouldn't be on the bench, she should be in jail. Francis King, Marion County, Florida. Your son was legally kidnapped, and unfortunately, we have such bad people patrolling our agency, there's nothing we can do. Come in, Miss Princey. Gonna disturb live. Sorry about that. There is so much information just on the Ken Scott profile alone and connected to I'm almost at the 5,000 mark, and that's just one profile. I don't even bring the other profiles into the loop much. You still hear me good?
I still hear you good.
Okay, cool. It just got so quiet. And look, they are taking the guns right now, and that is a New World Agenda, and they're doing it under the guise of a totally different MO. You know? And here's what I can tell you. If they can kick my family to the street on a house that I was paid up to date on, steal most everything I owned, and take all of my guns on a home I was paid up to date on. That's how serious this is. We're about to lose this country, and Donald Trump is not making America great again. I'm sorry. If he were making America great again, he would have sent the military to shut down the Bar Association. They have no license to practice law. They are lying through their teeth, telling you they have a license. They cannot produce one. They will try to produce their private membership association, their bar card, and get you to believe that that's their license. They've been committing fraud against the American people. And guess what they count on? Well, the registration process and the creation of that corporate fiction that nobody's telling you about. This is your first time hearing about it. Start digging in and do your own research. You do not own your children. Anything registered, you do not own it. It means someone else has an interest in it. And what you think is your state, it's actually a corporation. And they all have all their DUNS numbers listed. All my friends, close to 5,000, and I can't keep track of the number that maybe following to stay in that loop, and I have more friends requests than I can approve. Like I said, I think there's room for 63 more people to actually be on the friends list of this profile. And that's pretty much the same for everyone that gets a hold of this information, digs in, they see the truth of what's going on, they see the deceptions that are being played out against the American people. If Trump was truly making America great again, he would be telling the people that they've been pledged to a private bank and that we're not going to allow this to happen any longer. The Federal Reserve System should have never existed. And I think even the most novice researchers have come to that conclusion. But it is the birth certificate that ties you into the accounts of the Federal Reserve System. What's going on in these supposed courthouses? Creation of bonds, bid bonds, performance bonds, payment bonds. And the U.S. District Court buys most of them. You're worth more, your children are worth more in their private prisons than they are in this slumbering economy that everybody keeps saying is doing so great. And it's only going great for those that are complying with their slavery, the economic slavery. Let me read something for folks. This is about Edward Mendell House. Edward Mendell House was responsible and helped pick the charter members of the Federal Reserve Board during the Woodrow Wilson administration. And this is key to understanding what's going on today. Edward Mendell House had this to say to Woodrow Wilson. Very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people. And that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. And by such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer being unable to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by the operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent forever to remain economic slaves through taxation secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million could ever figure out our plans. And if by accident one or two should figure it out, we have our arsenal of plausible deniability. And after all, this is the only logical way to fund corporate government, by floating liens and debts to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges, i.e. building permits, driver's license, protesting permits. I'm just going to throw that in there. This will inevitably reap us huge profits beyond our wild expectations and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss we may incur, and in this manner, every American will unknowingly be our servant. However begrudgingly, the people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the high office of the president of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America. Now, links that I can share with you. Rod Class, Woodstock Part 1, YouTube. Any of the birth certificate and fraud, Google it, YouTube it. Look for the groups that are exposing the Seskike Trust that have been created in the background, that are tied in to all the adhesion contracts that the American people are being forced into, duped into, deceived into. For anyone that has, let's bring the driver's license up. Okay, I'll use Florida as an example. The legislation can only embrace one subject matter, making all driver's license commercial. And you look out around you and you look at the number of people that have declared themselves to be in commerce that are not being paid behind the wheel, handing that driver's license out the window because they're scared to death if they don't. This country has been completely taken over by a foreign interest. Our further cooperation with being forced into the registration, which when you go to this Ken Scott profile, which let me at least clarify this for folks. That would be http://facebook.com/TrueR1, TRURONE, or you will not find the profile. And I think that link can be shared by Bridget. Come dig into the information, because the 2 hours here is not enough to truly show you the danger that we're in right now. And, really hoping that Trump was going to come clean with the American people. And it's just seemingly is a disappointment, because I just don't see it happening. And there have been so many of us out here being mocked and ridiculed and torn down, placed in jail. A kill list in America. Let me repeat that. A kill list in America created by the Bureau of Land Management in the Hammond and the Bundy stands. A kill list. If they're willing to do that over some land, some grazing cattle, think what they're willing to do to us to keep this system in place. Every one of you can go on the GMEI utility and the fidelity.com. There's a step-by-step on the Ken Scott profile. It'll show you exactly how to look up that upper cap name and see hundreds of accounts all over the world with billions. Yes, billions in each one of these accounts. And it's not for the homeless vets. It's not for the homeless that are on the street, which they shouldn't even exist, because they've been hypothecating and putting this value into these trust accounts that have been created in the background that you don't even know exist.
Yeah, no, people. I got involved with a lot of this. I had to get off the legal fence because I had, I went through like a really major ordeal where, the government decided that it was going to put anybody in alternative medicine out of business in the state of Nevada. So before they even passed their own law through the legislature, they just went out, just started threatening people, cease and desist. In some cases, threatened you with being arrested right there at the spot in your office for no reason. And so that's kind of how I got involved. So through a major event, I had to decide which side of the fence I was on, and rapidly. Yep. So I totally get everything that you've been through.
Well, if folks are interested, if folks are concerned about the smart meters and the 5G, Soros-backed 5G towers, by the way, Soros-backed 5G towers. Yeah,
no, and they're strapping them to all the public water. They're going to radiate the crud out of the water. Well, in California, they already are.
You got the fluoride, you got the chemtrails, you got the vaccines being forced on the people. We have a school over here on Florida that was just caught forcing the vaccines, flu vaccines on the kids. If we don't take a firm stand against the infiltrators of this country, we're going to lose it. In fact, we've already lost it. I don't know how to express that without people going, oh, come on. I'm still driving down the street and going to work, and I can still go to the park. It's all going to come to an abrupt end if we don't get the infiltrators out of our lives. And I cannot stress to you enough, I'm not saying that all lawyers are bad people, but they're involved in an association that is foreign to the American people. You know, Brett Kavanaugh and this sex scandal distraction, that is both parties working the American people in an epic stage of just absolute, it's just so outlandish that everybody has to talk about it. He's a bar member, that's all I have to say. He is foreign in respect to the people. The United States is foreign in respect to the people. Because it's a corporation. Right down to your local municipality who are pushing the Agenda 21, the Agenda 30, Agenda 2024 to register everyone on this planet and microchip you. That is absolutely in the works. It's not a conspiracy. It's an absolute fact. The 5G
is a fact. Yeah, and Real ID is the push for the chip.
There you go. The Real ID is the next step. Nobody, and I mean nobody, should be participating with this fraud. And I know you're like, well, how am I supposed to function? Well, keep in mind what I just read to you about what Mendel House's plan was when they put the Federal Reserve back in this country in 1913. The absolute enemy of the people, and the most unconstitutional thing going on, regardless if you're looking at organic, the corporate constitution, the state constitutions, they all say coin money and gold and silver. What do we have? We have fake monopoly backed by a faith and promise of some very, very bad people. Period. If the Federal Reserve exists, then you are not free. You are living on a reservation. Hence the Federal Reserve, who has no reserves. And it's private. They just raised their rate 0.25%. Why on God's green earth are the American people paying interest to private bankers to create money out of thin air, to create and print and punch on their keyboards, just punch the digits in, there you go. Because that's what it's come down to, just digital numbers. And the cashless society that they want to bring in, and the total control grid that they're testing over in China, Google and Apple have moved to China. Well, what do we do about this? How do we put a stop to this runaway train? There are answers, and those are type of answers that are provided and discussed. Proving to the people that they're forced into the registration process. I want to talk about people that are coming into the world. I will never probably know them in my lifetime, but I'm talking about them right now. And our concern should be those that at least get past the abortion, who they do create certificates for the abortions as well. And they apply CUSIP numbers, and there's value to this, more than just selling baby parts that we know they're doing. I mean, this is how ugly this is. If you're being forced to register, how can you say you're free? You can't. That'd just be absurd. You're forced to participate. And see, people want to do the right thing, and they have been duped and deceived by the legalese, by what's called the dog Latin debased criminal language that comes from the Vatican and Unidroit. You see, you hear Trump talk about, oh, we're not going to follow this global agenda over here with the UN, but I didn't hear him say one word about us disconnecting from Unidroit. And Unidroit directly ties to Rome and the pedophiles of the Vatican that are being exposed at the local dioceses throughout this country. Because this has been going on for 100+ years. It didn't start last week. It didn't start a few years ago. How did 3 buildings fall when only 2 planes hit a building? These are the realities. at the amount of bright minds that have come out and said this was completely an inside situation. This was intentionally made to happen to hide the crimes that I'm talking to you about. When you tie it back to the Northern Trust Corporation, the investment conduit, REMIC, the income tax return, there's no law requiring anyone to pay income tax. It's all voluntary and considered a gift. And it doesn't go to help anyone in this country. These are just the facts. But you can look at the Security and Exchange Commissions. Australia Corporation is listed under the Security and Exchange Commissions under the United States. The Australians are waking up to the fact that they have a pretend government. The American people are waking up to the fact that they have a corporation pretending to be government. The UK is waking up to the fact that they have a corporation pretending to be government. And many other places around the world are waking up to these facts. I mean, would you like me to give you the DUNS number of the FBI? Who you can look up on Manta. It says it's a privately held company, just like your sheriff's office is listed as a privately held company, just like CPS is listed as a privately held company. So there's two members of two privately held companies that have to work together to steal children to get the Title IV-E or 4D funding. And the administrator that's operating in the family court position is actually working for CPS privately held company to steal your children for mass profits that are going into their retirement accounts. If there was a mass awakening tomorrow to all these facts that I'm discussing here, these people's lives would be absolutely worthless, and we're pleading with them to please stop. Please stop what you're doing. I tweeted Donald Trump with all of this information that I'm discussing right here on this show right now. I have proof. That's why I was doing a live feed showing people my tweets. They got removed right in front of our faces. Twitter removed my tweets, and they block my tweets now to Donald Trump. I have people that confirm this for me, because I go on my live feeds and I say here, or I go on my live feeds and show people, to try to show them an example of how to start trying to get this truth out there. If you know about it, it needs to be put in the face of those that don't know about it, that are profiting from it, that are if they don't listen and things split at the seams, it's going to be ugly. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants a civil war. But I can tell you, watching this for 14 years, we are trending so on the edge of a civil war. It's not funny. This is a really, really serious matter that the American people need to wake up to. That birth certificate has involved you in a fraud to destroy this country. A plot to destroy this country.
Yeah, one of the things I always try to remind people is that when they're dealing with the Admiralty law, that the doctors, before they were certified by the government, were actually the dock attendants that did the registering of the cargo that came off the ships in ports, and that hospitals have been turned into ports. Correct. Where the mother is a vessel. She was registered.
Very good.
The vessel when she was young, and she comes in and ports into the hospital and gives birth, and that commodity now becomes a ward of the government, the corporation, and then they actually turn you into a capital fiction, and you become lost at sea, and then they put themselves as the trustee over you.
That's right.
And so doctors are serious criminals, whether they really understand it or not, because they're the brokers. They're the brokers.
If you wanted to pull the rug out from under the Federal Reserve System and all these corporations pretending to be government, you put an end to the registration process that's being forced onto the American people at local hospitals in your community. That is ground zero to force the American people to be involved in their foreign takeover, to actually support it, whether they like it or not, Reflect back on what I just read to you about Edward Mendell House. Read the intimate papers of Mendell House. Rod Class Woodstock Part 1. Rod Class Fourth Administrative Ruling. Look at all the crimes of Hillary that have been exposed by Lazaro Ecanaro. I can't hardly pronounce his last name. You'll find him on my friends list. The Uranium One, the Harry Reid. Let me put this in simple perspective, because I really try to keep it simple. Because it's so convoluted and complicated on the other side. Or, oh, you need to retain all this knowledge. Well, wait a minute. It's like, I got to go to law school for 10 years? No. Recognize it for the fraud that it is and realize it should have never existed in the lives of the American people. Not the Federal Reserve System, nor the registration process that supports it all. That involves each and every man, woman, and child in this country and other countries around the world where they're playing out this same exact fraudulent system with corporations pretending to be the government. Because that's what they're doing. And it's being exposed. And the amount of children that are disappearing in this country, let me tell you something. When you die, they sweep all the bonds. They sweep all the trust accounts. All that money goes to their corporations and their players. It does not go to help the American people. They have enough in hundreds of accounts in what appears to be your name in the upper cap style all over the world to keep this thing going for the next million years. Because it's all just a hypothecated value that's only applied to what they choose to apply it to. And it's obviously not to help the American people. The Bar Association is responsible for this collusion over what you think's the courthouse. It's really a bank building. It's a banking transaction. The clerk of the court is actually the judge who's stamping the post. Remember, this all runs into the UPU. It all runs into the postal courts. Another great link, Tax Pursue on YouTube. It's Tax Pursue. You have to come to terms with the fact that, wait a minute, none of this monkey business should have ever existed in our lives. And how do we get it out of our lives? Ground zero and the foundation that keeps adding the blocks to the bottom of this pyramid, making it bigger and bigger and bigger, is continued registration, forced registration of our future generations to the system. And how are you going to expose all the ones that have been created? Oh, that's that sovereign citizen stuff. Because they've created terms to apply. Conspiracy theorist, sovereign citizen, which is an oxymoron. Can't be sovereign and a citizen. If you consider yourself a U.S. citizen, well, you're civilly dead and you're a slave. You're a slave to whom? To the Federal Reserve System that took over this country with the help of the Bar Association. They have no license to practice law. Ask them to produce one. I've got one recorded. Sounded like Looney Tunes. I left it at home. Wait a minute, you're at work at the DA's office without your license to practice law? They dropped that case because they don't want to be exposed. Another one, wrapped up in, because they showed up over at the Value Refuge. They got charged with all kinds of felonies. Well, they pulled the information off of GMEI Utility and Fidelity.com, printed out all these upper cap names that look just like the upper cap name on your license and the upper cap name on the Social Security and all that upper cap language. That's criminal in nature. It's not even English. And this gets to the simplicity of this. Why has there been a controversy for the last 200 years to officialize the language in this country? Most people think, No, English is no, it's not. It's not the official language. But if you Google what's the official language of America, Google will tell you it's English. It's a lie. It's an outright lie. The reason they've never officialized any language in this country, because it would kill all the foreign language that's been mixed with the English in this uppercase text. And we can get into the now syntax grammar, which is a whole nother level, but we won't. But you're going to find that there in the information that you can freely access on this Ken Scott profile, because that's all it's for, is to show you fact after fact after fact, to help you build confidence in what you're learning, because you have so many in the mainstream media, they won't go near this. In fact, Alex Jones just made mention of the straw men they created, because they're trying to unperson him. A person in the legal terms is a corporation. That's why all legislation applies only to a person. And the Constitution is dead. Why is it dead? Because it's suspended during any declaration of emergency. And we've had a declaration of emergency since Abraham Lincoln and the railroads and the stealing of the land of the original people here. Nothing to be proud of, America. We stole their children. We put them in schools. We took away their language. We took away their way of life. And now it's happening to us. You will either be a corporate slave, or you'll stand up and put an end to this. And I mean, it's game time. I mean, it's truly, truly time to take a serious look at what's going on in this country. And if we don't, when the hammer comes down, you're not going to know what happened. Is this the forces of the vaccinations on our kids? The stealing of our kids by private corporations? That's not enough. It's not enough that they're creating, again, more statutory rules to remove the guns from the American people. I mean, look at the David Hogg debacle. It's just so outrageous. They had to just make him go away. It was so bad. But how many people fall to this bad acting? You know, there's some that love being a slave. They love it. They want to know where their free phone is and why their food stamp card ain't reloaded on time. And that's the America that's been created by the Bar Association and the Federal Reserve System, and the registration process pulling in everybody and forcing everybody into participation. Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, just letting the listeners know that this is going on worldwide, and there isn't any place that, you know, they haven't been, the Federal Reserve hasn't been taking over countries to, you know, impose this, you know, fraudulent corporation on, you know, the masses.
Well, you know,
and the registration of birth, you know, I always tell people too, it goes back to and I never really understood this until my native teacher kind of explained it to me, but the blood, human blood is, you know, crystalline. It's like crystals, and we can communicate, you know, through, you know, our physical blood and how we're receptive to different environment. You know, we could call it psychic or dealing with our environment, and the more contaminated we are, the less that we're able to communicate with the environment, you know, through our blood. And so the blood is super important. And so when they first started registering births through the Vatican, they did it. Yes. They used it as christening, and they would tell people, well, your child is going to be evil, or it's going to have problems or whatever else if you don't bring it in and let us christen it. And then what they would do is they would use bloodshed from the baby so that they could make footprints, you know, the fingerprint of the infant on a piece of paper, and then they created the first registration of birth. So that what they were saying is that they owned, you know, it was like, you know, the original kind of blood sacrifice, and this is where the red fingerprint comes from on documents, because it would have been your blood that you would have, you know, signed with as a sacred, as your individual sacredness kind of a thing. So the Vatican's been kind of doing a lot of this stuff for a long time, and the human trafficking. And, I know it's really hard for people to kind of deal with the fact that there are people in the United States that are part of these organizations that are involved in the whole fraud. And, they do eat people, they do, kill and murder and painfully make people suffer. And if people look and they do research, they'll find that these kinds of practices have been going on for thousands and thousands of years. The bloodletting rituals on who they consider to be the lower classes.
Yes.
So anyway, that's all I had to add.
Well, taking the afterbirth is part of something that they do. In other words, taking that DNA that they really have no right to. I mean, look, you're nailing it when you talk about the doctors and their participation. Why do you think they're able to get away with what they're getting away with? They're another privileged class of people like the Bar Association. Look at the 60 Minutes lawyers say we run the country from 60 Minutes. And this lawyer outright tells you we make the laws to benefit us. And they're not even laws, they're statutes and codes that don't apply to the people. But they're saying they apply to you because you registered. Your parents' all caught up in a fraud. They had no idea what was going on. And there's been people before the internet that have been exposing this. And take truth.
Yep, the Montana Freemen were big. We got to meet one of them, the last one that was released from jail. And what we say is that they took his kidney out, in a botched surgery. They blinded them, and they did everything they possibly can while they held him in prison for 27 years. But these guys were really working to, they were amazing people. And what happened to them, and, how lucky we are to some of these people that came before us.
Blessed. It's beyond comprehension what they did to the people that he did not have the tool that we have right now. And if you don't start using this tool for everything it's worth, soon it's going to be taken away too.
So one of the things is people out there, if they're hearing some of this stuff for the first time, you want to know how you know that you're registered as a corporation. You can look at every single ID you have. And even I think power bills and stuff like that come in your capitalized name.
Correct.
And on your driver's license. So you'll see your name in all cap letters. That's a corporation. That's not a human being. And that's how you tell that you've been registered from birth. If you have a Social Security number, that's that's an account that was taken out so that they could make money, pull bonds and life insurance policies on you that you'll never, find out about. And we had a while back, we had some people that were helping some friends of mine, save their house. They were elderly, from the bank. And these group of people who stepped forward to try to, help out, these brilliant legal minds, they actually had an FBI guy who was working in secret and who would pull all of the QSIPs and find all of the areas where, they took out bonds and life insurance policies on people. And we found that the elderly people both had their names on the mortgage, and just the company for the loans that they got for the fake ass mortgage, they took bonds out $300 million in each of their names, and they also took out the same in a life insurance policy. So regardless, that company was going to get paid, and if the people ended up dead, even better, because then they could collect the life insurance policy. So, after 50, they start to consider us useless. And so by then they've created so many bonds and life insurance policies on us that were actually worth more dead than alive. And this is also why the medical professional experiments on us, because it doesn't matter to the corporation. we're worth the same dead or alive. And we're probably worth more after 50 if we can't, go to a concentration camp and shovel for, 15 hours a day.
That's no joke.
It's the truth.
The assimilation's been going on since 1913. Is a real key date, with Edward Mendell House sitting in the background orchestrating the Federal Reserve System back into place. And all of the statements that have been made throughout history from those speaking out against what was going on. And one of the key things they talk about is how to get the guns away from the Americans. And they're doing it right under our nose. When you're so proud of that Capitol name, they could have you running guns under that Capitol name somewhere throughout the world. The Trading with the Enemy Act. If you're hearing this stuff for the first time, the Ken Scott profile at facebook.com/TrueR1, TRURONE, is dedicated to showing you all the evidence. And so are close to 5,000 other people, and however many people are following the profile.
Yeah, and if people out there, are listening to this interview, and they, you can go to Carrying Stones and Digging Holes on Revolution Radio on the Schedule A, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can go on there. There's information on how to find me, and you can, send me an email, and I'll be more than happy to send you that link to the link that Ken Scott keeps talking about. So we're getting ready to come up to our 4-minute commercial in just a few minutes. What do you think are steps for people to start moving forward? Like, what do you think is a really important rabbit hole to go down?
Oh, it's the bottom. When you're digging holes, you hit bottom. When you once you hit the registration process, realize what that upper cap name presents, and it's more about the surname. And I'm going to throw out the nomen and the cognomen. What in the hell is that? Well, Justinian Deception on WordPress. The Justinian Deception on WordPress. All cap. If you're reading something in all caps, unless it's a title or corporation, it's not English. And that's why Harry Reid made sure he softened the bill to try to officialize the English language in this country in 2006, forcing the de facto to only be able to offer services and ordinances, in other words, to do any contracting in English, which would have killed the legalese, foreign-based dog Latin language that they're using in the contracts today mixed with English. And once you accept it, you've accepted the foreign jurisdiction, and you don't even know it, and ignorance is no excuse. All of their contracts are fraud. Every single one of them. Everybody that's in prison without an injured party is there by the actions taken by the Bar Association. There's no other way to present it than what it is. It is what it is.
And the basis is that, they need to fill their prisons because they need to make money. So no matter how you slice and dice this whole thing, you are a commodity, and you are used in any way that they want to use you in order to create, fake money and fake currency off of your back. And they'll do it any way that they possibly can and create any kind of fiction about you in order to make that happen. Whether it's in the hospitals, whether they, arrest you for no reason and you end up in jail, whether they take away your kids, whether they, whatever they can do in order to make money, that is, or keep their livelihood alive and stay in control of financial situations, that's what they're going to continue to do.
Oh, that's what they're doing, yes. Absolutely. How do you think it is that they justify spraying barium and aluminum on everyone? And I'm going to tell you, there's people out there that are going to say, oh, you can authenticate your birth certificate and you can do this and you can... No. Please stop. Should have never existed in the lives of the American people. And I tell these authenticators, I say, well, go outside and tell me, do you see any chemtrails? Well, yeah. Well, see, your authentication is not working. Why don't you hold that authenticated birth certificate up to that 5G tower and see if it doesn't microwave you? Take it out there to your smart meter and see if it goes away. Okay, see if it's going to get, probably a good 60% of the population in prison today is there without an injured party, with a corporation claiming to be the injured party by an action that they call an offense. An offense does not involve an injured party. It is a corporate rule, and you are being forced to sign up under these corporate rules through the registration process. You are being forced to pledge your children to this control grid. And the last thing Julian Assange had to say before he got cut off was they have sprayed a smart dust, a nano smart dust. It's already done. Now it's the question is who's going to control the system that is able to tap into each and every man, woman, and child on the planet where they are chemtrailing everyone. Everyone.
All right, 4-minute commercial. We'll be right back.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
This is Barbara DeLong, host of Nightlight Radio, inviting you to join me on a cosmic journey, exploring a metaphysical montage of spiritual material, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between, including spiritual readings for those who seek enlightenment. Let Nightlight provide you with equal measure of light, love and laughter, insight, wisdom, and inspiration. Monday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern, right here on Studio B, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
It's Bridget Lynn Dolgoff, carrying stones and digging holes. We just came back from our top of the hour break. I hope you got a good break. My guest today is Ken Scott. But first of all, we're listener supported and we rely on funding from you. And we have all kinds of great stuff in our funding area on Revolution Radio. freedomslips.com. I'm in the funding area where you can keep us all doing what we do. And we all volunteer our time, whether we have shows or we're running the network, to bring the best possible information that we can to the public. So please help keep our network on. Anyway, so Ken Scott has been talking to us about the corporation fiction and registration. And Ken, are you still with us?
I am.
Awesome. Hey, can you give our listeners some really some more information, or go back over websites that you've provided in the first hour, just to kind of give people, different YouTube channels and different this and that you may follow that you think are interesting, so that they can write that down this time?
Sure. And to make it easy for them, that's what the Ken Scott profile will bring you to all of the information that I'm sharing with you. So that should make it real simple. But yes, right off congressional record, Rod Class Woodstock Part 1. Rod Class, 4th Administrative Ruling. That was back in the Ron Paul days. Just to show you how long that information has been out. He had not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4, what people refer to as judges, but they're administrators, admit that they're all private contractors. Rod Class's last Supreme Court case was over the idea that he had a firearm. Well, let me educate you a little bit about what a firearm is. Anything with a rifle barrel is not considered a firearm. But wait a minute, what? You look at the federal definition yourself, what a firearm is. And you're going to be shocked to see, wait a minute, you mean my handgun is not considered a firearm? No, it's not. See, if you believe it is, they'll let you believe it is, and then there's no excuse for these people, and they'll put you in prison for something that isn't even defined in what they're charging you with. Because that's the deceptive nature of these corporations pretending to be government. Let me read this for people. Let me help you wrap your head. Everybody loves the IRS. Good gosh, so American. Not. All right. I told you the Security Exchange Information basically tells you that the IRS and the American Bar Association are the same organization under Northern Trust Corporation. All right, this paperwork was accompanied with a claim that they don't owe any taxes. The document was admitted in evidence, and the law firm involved declared bankruptcy and left the state. The banks are owned by Northern Trust Corporation, including Wells Fargo, that is owned by the Bar Association. Dun & Bradstreet is also owned by the Bar Association. Every time a judge makes a judgment, being a bar member, well, you know the rest. They're committing a crime, committing treason against the American people. They are warring against the American people. You are considered an enemy of the state. That's on YouTube. Enemy of the state. Many people have broke down this enemy of the state information for you. Everything always goes through the railroad, and over the oceans, and then to the Crown, and then to the Vatican. You have the District of Columbia, you have London State, and you have the Vatican. And you have Unidroit, which is based in Rome. Which the United States was signed over to Unidroit in 1964, right after Kennedy was assassinated. These are just the facts. They're the ones that are using the debased dog Latin uppercase text language to deceive the American people. I mean, if this is not hidden in plain sight, nothing else is. It's right under your nose, as you are so brilliantly explaining to your listeners shortly ago. It's all true. Open your mind, or taking a look real hard at what's going on. Stop hiding in your little bubble, because eventually it's going to get popped, and you're going to get pulled into this fraud. Not that you're not already forced into it, and if you're forced into anything, that's slavery. It's not patriotic to be forced into being a product of a corporation that, again, creates the taxpayer. That's what the registration does. It creates the taxpayer. Northern Trust Corporation, it's a corporation. Its entity type is a general residency located in the state of Delaware. And the registered information name, the Corporation Trust Company. The Corporation Trust Center at 1209 Orange Street, Wilmington, Newcastle, Delaware. Postal code 19801. Using a zip code puts you in the federal jurisdiction. The first name of the IRS in 1933 was the Internal Revenue Tax and Audit Service, Inc., 712 of 1933, file number 0325720. This is the lineup. The Central Trust Company of New York owns the Corporation Trust Company, which is the registered agent for the Northern Trust Corporation. Northern Trust Corporation is the holder of the IRS Company, J.P. Morgan Chase & Company, Citigroup, Inc., American Express Company, SPDR Gold Shares, General Electric Company, Wells Fargo & Company, United Health Group Incorporated, and Bank of America Corporation. So if you want to present a suit to the Northern Trust, you have to address it to the Corporation Trust Company. The Federal Reserve is also listed as a religious organization. All of the state courts are listed as private nonprofit corporations as well. All owned by the Bar Association under the Northern Trust Corporation. 1929, Hanover merges with Central Trust Company to form the Central Hanover Bank and Trust Company. It is still all railroad owned. When I tell people you read the railroad archives, and you'll truly get a grip of what happened in this country during the time of Lincoln in 1871 and the incorporation. When this corporation was created with no authority to do so, it should have never existed in the lives of the American people. This is what brought about the registration process that was created by who? The Bar Association. That's the Woodstock Part 1 right off the Congressional Record in the Smith Act. So, Chase acquires Equitable Trust Company, owned by John D. Rockefeller in 1933. The Glass-Steagall Act separates commercial and investment banking in 1935, and J.P. Morgan spins off its investment banking arm as Morgan Stanley in 1954. Chemical merges with Corn Exchange Bank and Trust Company in 1955, and the Bank of Manhattan and Chase National merged to form Chase Manhattan Bank in 1959, and J.P. Morgan merges with Guarantee Trust Company to form the Morgan Guarantee Trust Company of New York in 1961. The Manufacturer and Hanover merged to form Manufacturer Hanover Trust Company in 1968. The Chemical New York Corporation is established as a bank holding company for Chemical Bank in 1969. Chase Manhattan Corporation is formed as a bank holding company with Chase Manhattan Bank. Having its main subsidiary, Manufacturers Hanover Corporation, is created as a bank holding company with Manufacturers Hanover Trust as its subsidiary. J.P. Morgan and Company Incorporated is formed as a bank holding company with Morgan Guarantee Trust as its principal subsidiary in 1987. Chemical acquires Texas Commerce Bank shares in 1989. The Federal Reserve grants J.P. Morgan permission to underwrite corporate debt securities, marking the firm's return to the U.S. investment banking sector in 1991. Chemical merges with Manufacturer Hanover, creating Chemical Banking Corporations in 1996. Chemical Banking acquires Chase Manhattan and adopts the Chase name in 1997. J.P. Morgan purchases 45% stake in American Century Investments in 1999. Chase acquires Hambrecht and Quist Group Incorporated in 2000. Chase acquires Robert Fleming Holdings Ltd. Chase merges with J.P. Morgan to form J.P. Morgan Chase & Company. They were still all railroad managed by a trustee like Morgan and Rockefeller and Carnegie. So back in 1901, the Northern Securities Company was formed as a holding company in the business-friendly state of New Jersey. The new venture brought together the talents and wealth of J.P. Morgan, James J. Hill on one side, and E.H. Harriman on the other. Hill controlled the Northern Pacific and the Great Northern Railroad. Harriman and the Union Pacific, the Merchant Marine Act Shipping Board. What an incredible line of events. When I tell you this all goes back to the railroads, it all goes back to the railroads and the same central bankers that were taking over the country to begin with. So see, people, they got everybody clamoring at the corporate structure, which is a complete fraud, but they're never really looking at the idea of how this country was formed, was also done by mass genocide. And I guess that's the Blackfoot talking in me, as I had a grandmother that was 100% Blackfoot, and looking at how this country was formed and how Hollywood was used to demonize the original people here. They're just savages, and they all deserve to die. And they almost were completely wiped out. Some tribes were completely wiped out. Their children were taken from them, like we're experiencing today, and were placed in the care of someone else to kill their language, their traditions, their education, their way of life. That's what you have going on in the public school system today. Common Core is taught in China to create good factory workers. That comes from a friend of mine from China, and friends of mine in China, because my network reaches all over the world. Because all of us that know what we're experiencing today, all stems from the facts that are being shared with you right now. So, in Wells Fargo, like REIT, 2, and Wells Capital. See, these are two of the names of what owners are led to believe is Wells Fargo Bank, but in fact, the other separate branches, those of which the attorneys are actually representing, and not the actual bank. So, defending homeowners are not addressing the real party of interest. And this is the type of information that really bring it home. The administrators were told, if you rule against the banks, we'll collapse the economy. Where have we heard that before? If you audit the Federal Reserve, we'll collapse the economy. Ben Bernanke. When I tell you the country's been completely taken over, and all you are doing is going through the motions of participating with the takeover. And that's why it's so important that people come to terms with what's really going on before it does catch up with you, before they come and knock your door down to take your guns because some anonymous caller said you shouldn't have a gun. That you're some kind of whack job. And you shouldn't have a gun. Whether you committed a crime or harmed anyone doesn't matter. Not in America anymore. Why? Because there's no better money being made in this country than the SESTK trusts that are attached to all the adhesion contracts, birth certificate, social security, driver's license, even the 501(c)(3)s baptismals. I mean, what? Yes, even the baptismals of the 501(c)(3) corporate places of worship are in on the game. We have been lied to our entire life. Our parents and grandparents were lied to their entire lives. Waking people up is no easy task. They like being enslaved. They like that false sense. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I back, 27 years ago, I did an apprenticeship with a Lakota Sioux medicine woman who had been kidnapped by NASA off a reservation because she had special abilities. And by the time she realized, kind of like what was going on, and then, fled and we, went into hiding. But she had worked with a whole bunch of people who were kind of some of the big whistleblowers that came out like 30 years ago. And so, I've been trying to wake people up for 30 years. I mean, way long before internet. And it's tough, and a lot of it has to do with, people think that they've worked for something, and they want to try to hold on to that something, and they don't really want to rock the boat, but they don't really understand that they haven't worked for anything for themselves or their families, and they'll never end up with any of it either.
Nope, they're stealing the senior citizens just like they're stealing the children. Same thing. The guardian ad litems are stealing the seniors so they can steal their estates, so they can make them dead sooner than later, so they can sweep the trust accounts that are in the background. The entire corporate structure of the pretend government, pretending to be government, that Donald Trump is the CEO of. Alan West even told you Obama's the CEO of United States of America Incorporated. on national news. Look it up. It's on YouTube. None of this that I talk about comes without a huge amount of factual information that you can access. So if you're hearing about this stuff for the first time, I encourage the young folks, if you're listening to this and you're in your teenage years, you need to start wrapping your head around what's going on. And let me give you an example of how your school system is also being used to indoctrinate your children into the contracts that benefit these corporate structures. Driver's ed is being taught at a local school. But junior or juniorette is never being told that it's only needed if you're paid behind the wheel. If you're like Uber or a truck driver or delivering pizzas, or you're making money behind the wheel. They have duped the American people so hard with their deceptive language that they all think that it's a law. There's no law. This comes from 2 retired judges. There's no law requiring anyone to have a driver's license in any of the 50 states. And that's research you can do on your own. It's readily available. That people have been exposing, like the Montana Freeman. That's what it started over. Octopus usurpation of the Republican form of government. It's actually worded the octopus, the usurping octopus of jurisdictional authority. If you look that up, that's where you're going to find a huge amount of information that will end with Clinton coming into the scene. Billy Boy, drug runners, Hillary and Billy of Arkansas. Not to forget Waco, where they were about to expose those that they found out within them that were part of the MK Ultra. Wiping out peaceful people, Ruby Ridge, they have no qualms about wiping all of us out to keep this fraud in place.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of. I mean, Nevada is very corrupt. I call it the home of the cabal. That's where I live. It's always been the mafia and the home of the cabal, and anything goes except for people's civil liberties. But a lot of people have lived here for so long, they don't even realize they don't have them, you know, even though they think that they do have them. But we're lucky because I don't know how it's going to pan out, but we have Ryan Bundy, who is attempting to run for governor in our state, and I got to do an interview with him for about 30 minutes. But
who shamefully was not endorsed by Trump. Shameful.
Seriously, shamefully. But I really feel like, you know, after talking to him, because being in Nevada, you know, and having gone through what I've gone through in private practice and, you know, with them, and not at the extent that the Bundys went through it, I can't even imagine what that would have been like, the standoff with the military, just unbelievably shocking. But hopefully, you know, Ryan has said that if he does get in, that he's basically going to, you know, reshape the whole, you know, state and, you know, try to get it back to, you know, a place that's free and do the best that he can. And I just don't have any idea how it's going to pan out, but I really hope that he gets a chance, you know what I mean, to carry out his vision.
They'll probably kill him.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like
you know, that's the sad part, is I'm sure that's, you know.
Look, I was what they call an anonymous helper with what was going on with the Hammonds and the Bundys. Hammond's one of my friends on the friends list. When I tell you the most impressive part of this journey is the friends list that's been built, it's no joke. Ryan's there, Kelly Stewart, Gavin Syme, I mean, everyone. Daryl Thorne, you know, I was to John Ritzheimer, Blaine Cooper, who, you know, look at how easily everyone was broken up and divided. Some went to prison, some got set free. That were, wait a minute, pleaded out to the very same charge that got dropped and everyone got set free. Because the corporation is completely militarized. That's why everybody has guns now, and now they want the American people to give up their guns. And really what they should be doing is forming a line of well-disciplined armed men and women and just start marching down the street until we get the attention of the mainstream media and tell them you will report the truth, or we're just going to keep marching and building our numbers. Not with any agenda, but just to show a show of force, because I'm going to tell you, we're so close to being picked off one by one. When everything went down and they killed Lavoie, I put the DEFCON 1 out. Start getting your order, get your, if you even much as like the Post supporting them, you're on the radar. Oh, don't start scaring people like that. Okay, you need to take that down. No, they need to get their affairs in order because they're coming for them, and they did, and they still are. This is what you don't get. This is why people, I don't want to be involved in that. They're going to target me and my family. They're already targeting you and your family. It just hadn't got to you yet. They will. You wonder how things progressed in Germany when they had to tighten down the hatches. And it was still the same thing. All wars are banker wars. All wars are banker wars. In 1913, Mendel House helped pick the charter members of the original Federal Reserve Board, putting the Federal Reserve back into place under the Wilson administration. Okay, Edward's father was all for this is Democrats. Okay, the two-party system is communist. There should be no party. I want to make that very clear. The illusion of choice is a communist system. Look it up. Do your own research. But his father was involved with the KKK. They were the ones that were dispensing the vigilante justice after the Civil War in 1880. The new legitimate group was charged for dispensing justice, and that was called the Texas Rangers. And Edward Mendel House, who was given the title of Colonel House, who never spent a day in the military ever, you talk about stolen valor, but was given a title of colonel by one he places in as a governor. And you can't make this stuff up. His last name was Hogg, H-O-G-G. Edward uses his interest in the KKK. Okay, and he was helping to place governors and working the Wilson administration in the background. He was actually the one in control of everything. He was the unofficial advisor to each of the governors. Hogg is the one that gave House the title of colonel by promoting him to his staff. But he wanted to control more than just Texas. He wanted to control this country. He wanted to be the kingmaker, like Obama wants to be the king. So Edward would influence the candidates behind the scenes, and these people would perceive one man was representing them, and a really entirely different man was in control. And House didn't need to influence millions of people, only a handful. House is the one that helped establish secret societies in America. This goes back to the Council on Foreign Relations. He was instrumental in getting Wilson elected to go along with the Federal Reserve System. He had the backing of the House of Rockefeller and the National City Bank. They were members of the Cecil Rhodes Roundtable Group. And this roundtable group was the backbone of the secret societies. And its pet projects were the graduated income tax, the central bank, creation of the CIA, and the League of Nations. And we're dating back in history of 1901 and 1913. The House of Morgan and House of Rockefeller, they formed alliances with Dukes and the Mellons, and the groups consolidated the power to become dominant on Wall Street. This is Carnegie and Whitney and Vanderbilt and Brown and Harriman and Dillon Reed. And this roundtable group wanted to control the people. So their plan, having the government to tax the people and deposit the money in a central bank. This group took control of the State Department. They formulated government policies. They determined how the money would be spent. And they controlled the CIA, which is still today gathering information about the people and scripting and producing psycho-political operations, which is focused at influencing our decision making, which is really in accord with what the Round Table Group did back in history. The State Department policies in the group would consolidate all the nations of the world into a single nation with a single central bank under their control and a single international security system, like you see popping up with the Real ID. Some of the first legislation of Wilson's administration was the graduated income tax in 1913, and the creation of the central bank called the Federal Reserve. Inheritance tax, more robbing of the American people so that they cannot leave anything to their children. When we tell you the GALs are stealing the seniors just as well as they're stealing the children, do your own research. You're going to be shocked all over the world, not just here, all over the world. They're having contacts all over the world that confirm all of this. These tax laws are used to rationalize legislation and the establishment of tax-exempt foundations. And those became the link between these secret societies and their private corporations and the university system. And you see what the universities are like now. And this group controlling the universities and the sources of their funding and the money sheltered from the taxes being channeled in ways which would help achieve the Round Table Group aims. That is exactly what you have going on today. And we are exposing it, so it seems they're now posturing in a position to seem as though they're acknowledging these problems exist, but it's not stopping. I mean, let me give you some answers. Roll calls across America for the sheriff and police could fix this overnight, but they won't even let us talk to them. And I'm telling you, I've got cops, I have judges, I have lawyers, I have truly concerned people who have dismissed their positions, looking at what's going on today. Good cop that won't force statutes and codes on the people gets punished, gets fired, gets kicked out of the club, as George Carlin was talking about. And it's up to the people to recognize what's going on. You know, Erickson Harrell, you'll find on my friends list, 18-year veteran. He will not. He told his bosses, "I'm not doing this. It's wrong. I found out that this is wrong. You're having me enforce rules on a corporation fiction with no injured party. I'm not doing it." And they just punished him, suspended him for speaking out on how he felt about these school shootings that are going on, that turn into gun grabbing agendas like bam, instantly. That got people like David Hogg who are going to tell us what's going on? No. But it creates these emotional responses. And unfortunately, we have so many uneducated, ignorant people living in their bubble that refuse to look at the information being provided freely. Another problem in this journey is people want to start their own little followings and get people to pay them to tell them what's going on. That's what you're doing, a little different. That's a platform. You have sponsors. This thing is kicking itself. You got people out there that just want to start their own little circles, their own little private membership associations. But at the end of the day, they want to encourage the American people to keep going along with the fraud that's been forced into their lives. This position as a corporate fiction, you see that Capitol name, you're being defrauded. Period. Let me tell people about a story about a guy that contacted the electric company and says, "Oh, I've just noticed that you're challenging my faith, and I will tell you, you can send me a bill in my Christian name. I'll be happy to pay it." They never sent the man a bill, and they never came out and turned off his lights because they're caught. Why does the electric company need your social security number or your driver's license number or that state of ID, that corporate ID? Because they're tapping into the trust accounts. They're already getting paid, and they'll come and shut your electric off if you're not aware of what's going on. They'll turn your electric off, even though they're already getting paid. They're creating CUSIP numbers for abortions. They're creating certificates for live babies as well as they are for the babies that they're murdering. And who's funding that? U.S. Inc. This corporation pretending to be the government is responsible for funding absolute mass murder on a scale that makes all the other wars look like child's play. You have to say to yourself, no, they're not doing this. Do your own research. And see why, when I tell you, this is really serious stuff we have going on right now. And we are at crossroad. Now, we are truly going to take this country back and kick the fraudsters out the door, or we're going to continue to just surrender to it and watch our neighbors be punished for trying to expose what we're talking about here today.
Yeah, one thing I want to say is that, the people that are waging corporate law on us and admiralty law and all these other types of laws that turn us into fictitious or corporations, they're all brokers. So there's a whole bunch of people and organizations that work as brokers and don't even know that they're working as brokers between us and the kind of the people who are pulling the strings and have created a lot of this and are perpetuating this situation. And some of them are bankers and realtors. Realtors are total brokers because they don't realize that they're brokering mortgage deception.
Yep. Absolutely.
Between you and the bank. The DMV is a broker over licensing, insurance, blah, 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 blah. Doctors are the biggest brokers. Teachers and schools are brokers. The IRS is a broker. Social Security office is a broker. The city, county, state, and federal, if you need licensing, are brokers. Yep. Colleges are brokers. And, the attorney, judges, and cops are the military, basically, that work for the unseen in case you step out of line with one of the brokers or you don't fulfill the next contract that you're being forced to sign part of yourself over to. So sometimes we have to kind of,
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Listen to what she's saying, folks. Listen to what she's telling you. Your children are enrolled as walking, talking, foreign commercial obligations at the school. What document do they demand of you to enroll them? There's your answer. Look, I have a lawyer that is on my friends list. He doesn't do criminal stuff. He just does corporate stuff. What they're supposed to do. A lawyer can only represent a corporation. So how are they even able to be allowed to deal with you, a living man, woman? They're not. They're only allowed to deal with the corporate personality that was created without your knowledge. And that was done through the birth registration process. That's being forced upon the American people now. On the profile where I share stuff, you're going to find a picture of a birth certificate where no information was given. No, we do not want it. My friend's a paramedic. This was his grandbaby. Okay? It was grandbaby 1. They've done this with 3 now. Listen to what I'm telling you. No, we don't want it. Well, because so many people are resisting registering, we've been told by statute, by the Bar Association, telling them that it's law that they have to report the event to a third-party corporation. That's assigning the CUSIP number. That's trading it on the stock exchange. They're bundling and trading them on the stock exchange and creating corporations doing criminal things all over the world under what appears to be your name or your children's name. Run them on GMEI Utility and Fidelity.com, and you will see. We had someone take that information and put it on a court case. This was one of the women that went out to the Malheur, see what's going on, got charged with a host of felonies. David Straight, you will find on the Ken Scott profile. Absolutely brilliant guy. He's been trying and perfecting the paperwork for 35 years. And, and to his sadness, he's only been able to get back about 30 kids because his passion is children being stolen. But they're stealing everything. And you own absolutely nothing if it's in that Capitol name. You own absolutely nothing. That Capitol name, as Bridget shared with you, belongs to the Vatican. It's copyright and owned by the Vatican. Not to mention, it's not even English. Even though you can read something that's all upper cap, are they screaming at you? So once you start seeing that language involved, mixed with what is actual English, proper English, uppercase and lowercase, you're being defrauded. That's why the prosecutors and the DAs, they don't want to talk anything about that. That's that sovereign citizens conspiracy stuff. You're all just nuts. See, it's English. You can read it. No, it's not. Look up the Justinian Deception. Realize that we're controlled by Unidroid, which is based in Rome, which are a bunch of pedophile freaks telling the world they somehow are the grantors of your dominion. God. That they are the ultimate trust holder of the world. A bunch of pedophiles. No hiding that anymore. That's what you have going on. I mean, this is the wake-up call of all wake-up calls. If you can't stop the registration process, what makes you think you can stop any of the rest of it that's going on? And I've witnessed it only get worse. More militant, more violent. Go ahead.
So, I was just going to say something, regardless of, people's feelings out there. But back when I was doing citizen lobbying in 2009, because I, was being threatened with arrest over my private practice and stuff, couldn't figure out what was going on. And we found a bill that they were trying to put through the legislature. But I ended up working with, 7 amazing people who, religion-wise, agreed to disagree, but that they tried to hold the civil liberties as much as they possibly could. And one was a woman who came from a legal family who was Mormon, and so we fought against, at least on the legislative level, trying not to get, alternative therapies or vitamins or whatever removed from the state of Nevada. And we were successful in that not happening. It would have been a felony under Admiralty law or whatever their law. So, but one of the things
under the lost at sea law. That's
under their law. They're not our law. But anyway,
private law. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. So, but anyway, so one of the things that she was telling me was that the Mormons, they're actually training a lot of the women in the Mormon, I'm going to call it movement or whatever, to do birthing at home and also midwives. So because they don't want to be, registered with the corporation and having their babies in actual hospitals.
It won't matter. They're raiding people with SWAT teams who don't have their children.
Yeah. No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is
just to be clear, this is being forced upon the American people now with violence and militarized police and sheriff.
It is.
So, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, but there are people that are trying, like Ken right now, he's talking to you. He's been awake. He's been doing his research and trying to gain understanding. There are all kinds of different people attempting, on whatever level that they can to try to create a better life for the people that they're involved with, and also, trying to make changes, attempting to, start with creating like freedom in their own communities, as far as midwifing, things like that.
Right. Well, nobody should have to fear going to the hospital and being forced into the registration process. And let me get back to where I was with the birth certificate, that my friend who's a paramedic and his grandbaby, they didn't give them any information. They said, well, we're going to do what we got to do. And they were like, well, you're doing it on your own accord. Nobody asked you. We don't consent to this, and we're not giving you a name. So they created a birth certificate with an asterisk, 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 and the surname in upper cap. Bearden. This has been freely shared with everyone so they can see the disparity of the corporations to register the American people into their fraudulent system so they can be under the pretend government. That, I'm sorry, CEO is Donald Trump. If he'd like to have a discussion with me in front of the American people about this, I would be happy to do so. Because it has to stop. It's becoming more violent by the day to force the participation under what many can see and recognize as a fraud. And any legislation can be challenged by the fact that all legislation applies only to the person, which is a corporation, which is that corporate fiction created on the registration process that the American people are being forced into. This goes back to 1913. It goes back to the Mendel House Plan. That's in full effect today.
And they're not beyond murdering people. I think up to date over the last 4 years, there's over 100 scientists that went against their views and have been murdered. And their murders have not been investigated in my realm of alternative, homeopathic, naturopathic medicine. We have like over 160 doctors and practitioners that have been murdered in the last 4 years in the United States, and their murders were not investigated either. So it's not beyond them to actually just, and then because they own all the brokers and the military of the brokers, nothing ever really gets investigated.
That's right. They are making all of the critical decisions for this country. And I'm sorry, but that is for their foreign interest. They are not making decisions in the interest of the American people at all. In fact, quite to the contrary. Keeping you enslaved to the corporate fiction they created is key to everything staying together. The house of cards collapses when you finally unite in your communities and you tell your sheriff, are you brokering for the Federal Reserve System and the private bankers to force registration on those in our community? And what happens when you finally put that registration process to bed permanently? Put it in its coffin, nail it down, and bury it deep. Well, then you're going to have what? Oh, real Americans on the land that have not been forced into this participation of this corporation pretending to be government. So now you have this, well, wait a minute, now you've exposed all the ones that they've created. You will never expose the ones they've created until you stop the registration process dead in its tracks. It should never have been tolerated. It shouldn't be tolerated today. Unless you want to be tied to an account with the Federal Reserve private bankers, and people like Ben Bernanke who will tell you, well, if you try to look at what we're doing, we'll collapse the economy. We'll kill you. They've done everything but kill me. I live a life like Julian Assange. I don't go anywhere. I don't go out. I don't put myself out in the public so they can create some type of scenario to cage me. I stay deep in the woods with a Wi-Fi connection, and I know that what I speak out about is so serious and so damaging to their business model that I'm not taking a risk. It's just like that. It's a Julian Assange type life. I have my little embassy, and that's where I stay. Because otherwise, and tell the people, I had my mom rescind the event. Witnessed, thumbprinted, and I sent termination letters of the Sesky K Trust to whitehouse.gov. That's on the River of Life YouTube channel. It's River of Life News YouTube channel. You'll find that. You'll find the Woodstock with Rod Class. What's Going On? Another YouTube channel of a gentleman that has been breaking it down for many a moon. He'll also go over the Edward Mendel House. That's M-A-N-D-E-L-L, Mendel House, Edward Mendel House. And when you read the intimate papers, you'll see that the plan all along was not to only control the monetary policy, but to control trusts. and industrial relations.
Yeah, and we're the monetary policy.
Yes.
We're the ones that are commodities bought and sold. And not only are we bought and sold on a physical level, or our blood, and bought and sold as food, we're bought and sold as animal sacrifices, we're bought and sold, but on our spirit as well, because your spirit is what is the generator of power to operate basically the vessel or the vehicle. And so these people make claims on all of that. And in some terms, it's been used that you're the original depositor.
You are the gold bars.
You are the gold bars.
That's right.
Because
silver.
Without the labor and our work, this whole system would fall apart.
Look, they keep telling you that the economy's great. Really?
It's terrible.
I'll tell you when the economy's great. The economy's great when one family member working one job can afford the home and to take care of their family. And until we're back to that, the economy is absolutely in tatters. It is so ready to collapse. And then when it does, none of this information is really going to matter, because it's going to be absolute chaos. And that's what they want. They want us to look like Syria or Iraq. Now they're talking and posturing about what two places? Syria and Iran. Well, let's think for a minute. What's going on in Syria and Iran? Oh, they don't have central banks. Rothschild owned central banks.
And they're the last standout, I think, because they took Libya down. Libya had their own banking system.
Mm-hmm. Gaddafi was ready to bring back gold back. Man, he treated his people better than we ever dreamed of.
Yeah, no, and the thing is that there's a little documentary, I think, that's called he created a river or something like that, and he did technology feats to provide enough water so that his people could grow the best possible food in their country.
That's right. No GMOs.
Yeah.
He made sure that people were taken care of when they married. You got $50,000 for a home. They got $5,000 when they had a kid. Everyone shared in the profit of the oil. Now, what's going on in this country with the natural resources? We got people like Hillary who's selling it to Russia, Uranium One. We got people that are selling our natural resources to foreigners. And are we getting a piece of it? Absolutely not. There's no reason we should have any homeless vets or any homeless people on our streets at all.
Yeah.
When you see trillions being thrown out the door to foreigners, why there's millions of people on the street homeless, it must be millions of people's fault, right? No, it was by design to create an economy that was not survivable.
Yeah, and this is the thing, a lot of times people, all last winter I worked with Food Not Bombs, and, we go out and we make food out of our own pocket, and we do it buffet style once a week for the homeless. And we were feeding in this one area on the river under the bridge. We were feeding like 80 to 100 people every Monday night, and we got people to support us in that. But a lot of them, people would say they've become white tinfoil hat people because, they're homeless and they've had lots of bad things happen to them. And no, they actually become, tinfoil hat people because they realize when they don't have the ability to work in the system anymore, they're not allowed to for whatever shape or form. All of their system corporation privileges have been revoked. And right. So they can't even go to a food bank, a church that is supposed to give away the food to everybody who comes for free. Right. And they can't go to a food bank without an identification that has, right. Your registered corporation name, because they have to actually write that down every time that you come in so that the government can watch, who's coming in and who's not.
Wait a minute. They're getting funding.
They are. They get part of $9 billion a year.
How do you think they afford these huge buildings?
Exactly.
Okay, they are getting rewarded by the trust accounts that are in the background. Right. Instead of moving the people from the streets and getting them a home, and putting them back on their feet, they're having to suffer.
Exactly. And that's when a lot of them really wake up, is because, you talk to them, and they become really done with the system and decide that they're going to try to figure out how to leave a small footprint, live their life in a good way as a free man, on the land, trying the best that they can to do that. So I've had a lot of amazing conversations actually with homeless people, more so than not, because they understand how the system works, because it worked against them and now it keeps them at bay and keeps them out of it. And so they have to learn how to actually maneuver around in a whole different way, which helps them to restore who they are. I mean, there's a lot of suffering and horrible things these people should be taken care of. By birthright of them being born in this country, they have every right to every asset and resource that is here.
Yep. And why is it okay? We've discovered that, wow, they're giving more support to foreigners coming into this country than they are the American people. Well, now that we're supposedly turning that off, why aren't we turning something on for the American people? If you're on food stamps or any type of assistance, well, if you get, for example, 400 in food stamps, they're getting probably 40,000 in funding or 400,000 in funding. What? Yeah, every time you get your little 400, you get crumbs from the bakery in your name. It's the best example I can give. There should be no one homeless, and I'm ashamed of Trump and the fact that he's been in 2 years as the CEO of this corporation that has been doing nothing but victimizing the American people, and that he didn't turn things around for the benefit of the American people. Oh, I'm going to create more jobs and blah, 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 blah. A lot of these people cannot go and get jobs. They have no foundation in which to operate off of.
Exactly.
They are stuck in a vicious cycle. And how many of them do you talk to that are college educated?
Well, I talk to a lot of them that are veterans.
Yep, are college educated.
And elderly that have, been forced out of their affordable housing. And so they're all smart people.
Yep.
For sure. And so, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so we have like about 3 to 4 minutes left. Is there anything that you want to finish with? And we'll make sure that all your links that they get out and where they need to go. River of Life News YouTube channel, and then his FB Facebook link that he's announced like several times. But is there anything that you want to like finish with?
Yes. The people that are working with the corporations under the deception of what's going on are not our enemies. And at the end of the day, the people that we need to really wake up the most are the sheriff and the police. Okay? And this is a huge job to get them to even listen. But they all have Facebook pages. Every sheriff's office has a Facebook page. Every police department has a Facebook page. The sheriffs usually have their own personal Facebook pages. The police chief usually have they love social media. And that is your opportunity. The county commissions, the city councils, all of the people that may or may not know what's going on, but you have an opportunity to put that truth in front of them. You may get blocked, you may get your comments removed, but if hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of us begin to use and utilize those avenues to put these truths, once you've taken hold of it and you can confidently see and express, and the information is really out here. It's almost just a copy and paste type situation for you. But the police and the sheriff are key to us bringing our counties back, taking our counties back. The police and sheriff should not be supporting federal agencies for federal funding, but that's what they're caught up in. They have to have the sheriff or police there with CPS to take the children to get the funding. Because the administrator is actually working for the Child Protective Services Agency. He's not actually working for the people. He's working in an administrative capacity for a privately held company. So it's very important that we wake up our sheriff and police. The recruit schools. that are teaching them that the statutes and codes are applicable to the American people, they need to be shut down. Because they should be teaching the limitations of the Constitution, not the codes and policies of the corporation, because that's what you have going on. But I warn you, the Constitution has the unlimited ability to contract in there. And that was thrown in there by Alexander Hamilton, aka Levine, who wanted to make sure that the foreigners had preference in the contracting, and now they're forcing the American people into the contracts by the barrel of a gun and calling that fair and equitable. And it's the complete opposite. It's a huge money-making Ponzi scheme being pulled off on the American people. Everything that we've talked about here in this 2 hours has reflected on how unconstitutional everything they're doing is.
Thanks for listening. Thanks, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio! The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution